Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking something fascinating and honestly pretty intense. We're decoding the absolutely uncompromising mindset required to reach the top 1% of success. If you're a focused learner ready to figure out what actually separates the elite from the completely average, well, you're in the right place. We're looking at source material that completely strips away all that usual feel-good motivational fluff to reveal a much harsher, way more demanding reality about what it really takes to win.
Sometimes the world no longer needs a hero. Sometimes what it needs is a monster. Just let that sink in for a second. The material we're digging into today makes a really unapologetic claim. Extraordinary success? It doesn't always come from playing nice. It actually requires tapping into this darker, totally relentless energy. It's about waking up to the fact that a polite, passive approach almost never shatters boundaries.
Section 1. Embrace the monster.
So this first phase is kind of like an inverted hero's journey. You know how society constantly teaches us to be these harmless sheep, to sheath our competitive instincts, keep our heads down, and just blend in. But the elite mindset argues that the exact opposite is necessary for true greatness. The average expectation is just to be harmless, be purely virtuous, never rock the boat. The 1% mindset, though, it fully embraces being aggressive, living with extreme urgency, being capable of what the source calls controlled violence. Now, it's not about mindless chaos. It's about channeling this ferocious competitive drive into laser-focused execution.
There's this profound truth highlighted in the text: he who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man. The insight here is really wild. Embracing this monster alter ego is actually a highly effective psychological tool. It's a way to literally numb the everyday pain, the fatigue, the self-doubt that completely paralyzes ordinary people. When you step into the arena, you adopt a persona that simply doesn't even feel the urge to quit.
Section 2. Interested versus obsessed. The source makes a fantastic point here. Look, everyone wants the lion tattoo, right? But very few people actually want to do what lions do when it's time to put in the work. It's a stark dichotomy. Losers let things happen, while winners make things happen. Losers see thunderstorms and icy streets. Winners see rainbows, grab their gear, and put on their ice skates. It's this fundamental shift in perspective where the obsessed mind literally cannot process an obstacle as a reason to stop. They only see choices that have to be made.
So I gotta ask you directly, are you just interested or are you obsessed? The material argues that to achieve greatness, it's entirely okay, actually, it's necessary to be completely unbalanced for a while. Interested people sit around and watch obsessed people change the world. You have to be intentionally unbalanced to find the massive amounts of energy required to pull off the impossible.
To really anchor this idea of obsession, there's an incredible anecdote in the source about basketball legend Kobe Bryant. After shooting a bunch of humiliating air balls in a critical playoff game, his brain flat out refused to process the failure. Instead of going home, sleeping it off, and regrouping the next day like a normal person, he found himself at 3 a.m. in an empty high school gym. He had a janitor let him in, and he shot baskets all night and right into the next day. That is the literal definition of obsession in action.
Section 3. The unseen grind. We're moving away from the stadium lights and the glamorous spotlight now. Let's talk about the grueling reality of the work that happens when absolutely nobody is clapping for you. 4 a.m. The source hits this hard. Champions are not found standing on a podium with their hands raised. They're forged in lab studies, in dark, empty gyms, in those lonely, quiet hours of 4 a.m., way before the rest of the world is even considered waking up. The true competition isn't the game itself, it's the behind-the-scenes isolation, where the real work gets done.
The agonizing process usually looks a lot like this. Step 1, you work with 0 results. Step 2, you work with 0 results, but maybe, just maybe, you get slightly better. And it repeats and it repeats. Failure and frustration compound over thousands of unseen hours. And then, suddenly, step 3 hits, and the outside world calls it an overnight success. But you and I know there is absolutely nothing overnight about it.
To survive that unseen grind, you have to confront a massive psychological barrier. Ask yourself, what would you do if you weren't afraid? This provocative question is a key tool the top 1% use to make huge life decisions. Usually, the thing you are most terrified to do, the thing that seems absolutely impossible, well, that's the exact path you need to take.
Consider this number for a second. 106 pounds. The source material shares a staggering story of a guy who weighed nearly 300 pounds. He was laughed straight out of the room by military recruiters when he said he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. But he didn't cower from the laughter, and he didn't give in to the fear.
Instead, he lost 106 pounds in under 3 months just to meet the requirement. He did the impossible because he stopped listening to the fear and started executing.
And when that fear inevitably creeps back in, or when things go utterly wrong, the source provides a brutal but ridiculously effective answer. When your plan fails, there's only one option: stay hard. When you get knocked to the canvas and everything in your life falls apart, you have to drown out that little voice of doubt with sheer, unbreakable will. You keep going because the alternative, going back to being average, is simply unacceptable.
Section 4. Fuel from fear.
The elite don't just ignore negativity. Actually, they tactically weaponize the doubt, the laughter, and the hatred of others to push themselves even further. It's not about finding inner peace. It's about using intelligent anger. You actively seek out the sound of laughter. You make disrespect personal. The source highlights fighter Conor McGregor, detailing how the entire sports world laughed at the idea of an Irishman ever winning a UFC world title. But he didn't block out the laughter, he completely enjoyed it. He used it intelligently as fuel to light a fire under his belly, eventually winning multiple world titles and forcing every single one of his haters to become his congratulators.
Section 5. Emotional maturity.
But hey, here's the catch. You can't just be a raging monster all the time. Eventually, all this chaotic, aggressive motivation has to be brought under strict, cold, calculated control. Emotional immaturity is allowing your motion to be completely dictated by your emotion. You get a bad night's sleep, or it's raining outside, so you just stay in bed. But emotional maturity, that's executing your purpose regardless of how suboptimal you feel. The mature mind understands that how you feel today has absolutely zero bearing on the work that must be done.
According to our source, discipline isn't some magical genetic trait you're just born with. Not at all. It's rooted in the hard truth we tell ourselves. It's the unavoidable result of admitting that you are not happy with being average, looking at your untapped potential, and demanding a higher return on your investment in life. If you can actually accept that truth, discipline simply follows.
Section 6. Undeniable proof.
Let's pull all this intense narrative back down to earth for a minute and look at a really grounded, highly actionable conclusion for your daily routine. You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. True, lasting power comes from outworking your self-doubt every single day. The source talks about treating every day like a blank slate. You wake up, you start at 0, and your one job is to score a 100 today. If you do that, you have undeniable proof that you can do it again tomorrow. It's all about stacking those wins until your success is undeniable.
So, will you remain average, or will you unleash the monster? True greatness requires tearing down the walls of your own limitations, killing the complaints, and making the brutal, daily choices that very few people are willing to make. Thanks for joining me to unpack this explainer today. Keep stacking that proof, and I'll see you next time.